Hello everyone, this is Kaustav here from Inside Stat, and today we are going to start with our first DAX functions, and we are going to start with some very basic DAX functions. So we will look at some very basic DAX calculations. So let's go ahead and look at what these calculations are. Right, so when we talk about basic calculations, these DAX calculations are, although basic, but they are very important and they form a very important component of any exploratory or explanatory data analysis. So what these are, let's look at that. So we have sum, we have count, we have average, we have min or max, and we have divide. So in this video, we are going to talk about sum, count, and average. In the next part of this video, we are going to talk about min, max, and divide. So what is sum? As the name suggests, sum is nothing but it returns the sum of all numbers in a column. And the function, how you write the DAX function, is we put an equal to sum and the column name. Similarly, for count, what count does is, again, it counts the number of occurrences in a column, or it returns the number of numbers in a column. How many number of rows are there in a column? An average, as we all know, and you might have been doing these kind of calculations manually, average is nothing but the arithmetic mean, right? So it returns the arithmetic mean of all numbers in a column, and the syntax is average of the column name. Now let's put this into action. Right. So let's say if the business comes and tells us or asks us, we want to look at the total order quantity by category name. We want to look at how our category is performing, right? So how do we go about doing it? Right now, we all talked about how to come up with measures. We talked about implicit measures and explicit measures. Now, a best practice in defining measures is we should always keep our measures in a different table. Yes, you heard it right. Instead of creating a measure inside any of these tables, I would like to create a measure that would reside in a measure table. Now, how do we come up with a new table? So in order to come up with a new table, it's very simple. There are different ways of creating a table, but the most effective one is through here in the home ribbon. If you see, there is enter data. I click on enter data. All I have to do is name this table. I'll call this measure table, and all I have to do is just load it. It'll create the measure table in my report view here. If you can see it here, there is just one column, and all I now have to do is right click here, click on new measure, and let's say as the business asked us that they want to know the total order quantity, so I name my DAX expression first. I have to name this measure first, so I'll call this total order quantity. And what do I want in this total order quantity? What does the business wants to see? The business wants to see all the orders. Now in this case, we will filter it by the category name. But please understand, when you are creating these kind of measures, they can take any filter context. I can filter it by category name. I can filter it by dates. I can filter it by product name. It doesn't matter. That is the beauty of explicit measures. So what do I do now? All I have to do is call in the function. So all I have to do is write sum. So if I click on this arrow here, we will see the documentation or a very brief about what this function does. So it adds all the numbers in a column. So it will be applied on a numerical column, right? And we know which numerical column we are talking about. So when I click on tab, you'll also see the syntax here. So the syntax is sum of column name. So all I have to now do is come up with the column name. Now I know this column resides in the sales data table, so I'll call the sales data table, and this is where it resides, sales data order quantity. I'll click enter, do a shift enter, come to the next line and close this function. Click on enter. Okay, so it shows that my order quantity already exists because we already created it in the sales data table. So we'll close this and we'll call this total order quantity new. Once you create this new measure, please always format it. So we know that this is a whole number because we are talking about the sum of the order quantities, and we want uh, the numbers to be separated by a comma, and the number of decimals should be 0 because this is a whole number. Okay, this is fine. Now let's bring this into life. So I bring about this matrix on the rows. I will get the category name from the product categories lookup. So category name here, and in the values from my measure table, I click on order quantity. Look at this. So this is how we have received orders basis our category name. So our accessories, we do majority of our business through accessories, then bikes, and then clothing. Okay, so this is how we use explicit measures in visualizations. Okay, now the next function that we will talk about is the count. So count will count the total number of occurrences for us. So now if the business comes and asks us, I want to know the total number of returns. Instead of the sum of returns, I want to know the total number of returns. For example, if a customer 1 comes and returns 2 items, when we do a sum of the return quantity here, it will show us the total sum of all returns. For the customer number 1, it will show as the total order returned as 2. Now I want to know what is the number of returns. I don't want to know the sum of returns. I want to know how many times a particular category has been returned. I don't want to know what is the number of items that has been returned. So how do I do it? Again, I go to my measure table. Now, I don't need this column 1. I can easily drop this. So all I have to do is right click on it and I can say delete it from the model. We don't need column 1. Right, so this is our measure table now. We have one measure. Let's create the next measure. So the next measure talks about the total return quantity. And all I have to do is call on count, and I know count is just count column. It shows here, and all I want to do is count the number of returns. So I go to my returns data and I go to return quantity. So now it will count how many rows of returns are there. Instead of summing up all the values inside the return quantity column, it will now count how many rows of return data is there in the returns table. Then I close this, return, enter, and this is also a whole number. Put a comma, and let's bring in this value now. So total return quantity. So look at this. So there were a total of 1809 returns, and since I'm doing most of my business from accessories, most of the returns are from accessories. So I have more than 1,000 items, almost 1,115 items that has been returned for accessories. Now, if the business wants to know what is the total returns that have happened, Now it would make sense to sum all of them up. So now I can create a new measure again. I can call it, um, total returns. And this time I'll do a sum, and I'll go to the returns data table. I'll sum it up now. Now this will tell me how many total returns have been made. Now look at this. Again, it's a whole number. I want a comma. Everything's fine. I go to my measure table and total returns. Look at this. So this is the difference. So we can say that almost, can you now see, I have a total of 1809 returns. These are total number of times. And this is the quantity that has been returned. So can I say that almost every time one product is returned? These two are very, very close numbers. Now I can get this number from the returns data table as well. So if I go to my returns data table, I just click on this and look at this. These two values are exactly the same, right? Now what is the difference? Why did we create a new measure? Because this is an implicit measure and this is an explicit measure. I can bring this total returns into any calculation, into any visualization from the measure table, right? So this is the difference between implicit and explicit again. And this is the difference between the count. What is the count doing? Count is counting the number of rows, and sum is summing up the values inside individual rows, right? Okay, now let's look at average. What does average do? Average is nothing but the arithmetic mean. So let's say the business talks about, or the business is asking us now, what is the average price of these categories? We want to know the average price, or the average cost. So how do we do it? Now again, we'll have to calculate a new measure. So go to the new measure, and let's say we want to know the average price. Average price, and all we have to do is call the average. Now if you look at here, it returns the average, or the arithmetic mean, of all the numbers in a column, right? So I'll call the average, and where is the price? We are talking about the average product price. So that will be in the product lookup table. So if I call the product lookup table, there should be the price. Look at this. There is the price here. All I have to do is average product price. Close this. Enter. Now, price is not a whole number. It's a currency. By default, the comma has been applied. Now, I don't want the decimals to be auto. I want it to be precise up to 2 decimal places. And there should be a dollar sign. Okay. The moment I do a dollar sign. Okay, cool. Now, let's look at this. Now, let's bring in the price as well. I'll take out the return, and this is fine. Let it be there. Let me bring in the average price as well. So the moment I bring the average price, look at this. The average price of accessories is $34. Average price of bikes is $15.41. And average price of clothing is $50. And average price of components not been sold. That's why we don't have any values here. It's 432. Right? So these are basic functions, but these are very, very powerful in doing some effective exploratory data analysis, or EDA. So in today's video, we talked about the basic calculations, the basic DAX, and we saw how to use sum, how to use count, and how to use average. In the next video, we'll talk about the other basic functions. So if you like this video, please do like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please put it in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer. This was all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.